be allowed to appoint replacements for sitting MPs who die instead of holding a by-election. Tonight, we interrogate that viability, the feasibility and legality of this proposal. Stay with us. Also, calls heightened for NDC MPs who video recorded secret ballots during the approval of the new ministers to be hauled before the Privileges Committee. Is there any merit in this call? We find out by talking to an expert in parliamentary affairs. Stay with us on Ghana Tonight. The Minister of Transport has been responding to concerns of passenger safety on our water bodies. Tonight, we bring you an update on the conversation we started last night on the worrying spate of canoe accidents claiming lives in this country. Stay with us here. You're an integral part of the conversation already. There's a question on our Facebook page about this particular proposal by Peter McMenu that if an MP dies, resigns, is a sitting MP, instead of spending money to conduct a by-election, just have the person replaced by the party that he or she represented. Let's find your thoughts on this as well. We're very interactive on Facebook and Twitter. The hashtag is Ghana Tonight. Let's get talking. I am Alfred Okansi. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs. A former minority chief whip is incensed about the entrenched positions MPs take in decisions they take on the floor of Parliament that do not reflect the will and dictates of the constituents they represent. Eulogizing the former Old Tafo MP and the former Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation, Dr. Anthony Akotosei, Mohamed Muntaka Mubarak says the conduct, if not halted, will cripple the current Parliament.
We are taking too much entrenched positions, both sides. Those in government taking so much entrenched position, those in opposition taking extreme entrenched position. And I can bet you this is not helpful. It's not helpful to our country. It is not helpful to the development of Parliament.
The Deputy Speaker of Parliament has directed the Education Committee of Parliament to investigate the University of Ghana's willful disregard of a court order to reinstate students of the Commonwealth Hall after they were dismissed. Contributing to a statement by Bosa South MP Dr. Clement Apak, the MPs were unanimous in their condemnation of the university, whose council is headed by a former Chief Justice.
I will refer this statement to the Committee of Education to ask them to engage the university and to report back to us why the university authority, headed by the immediate part Chief Justice, she is the chairman of the University Council. So we expect that the law and order, respect for the courts, the sanctity of the court orders are respected.
The United States Vice President Kamala Harris has promised over $1 billion to women entrepreneurship across Africa. The pledge would also include another $60 million in a Women in Digital Fund.
Digital services are essential to 21st century economies. Yet there is a gender divide in the world. So today, to help address this, I am pleased to announce here with these leaders that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, together with our administration, will establish the Women in the Digital Economy Fund, which is a $60 million global fund.
Hundreds of homes have been disconnected over illegal connection by the National Revenue Mobilization Task Force of the Electricity Company of Ghana. According to ECG, residents have deliberately bypassed installed meters to consume power without paying.
We discovered that a lot of the households have bypassed the meters that have been installed. So there are a lot of illegal connections, and so we are here to disconnect them and rectify some of the situations.
Transport Minister Kwekwo Foriesiama says the Ghana Maritime Authority and the Ghana Navy must be held liable for lapses in water transport in the country. The minister, who was responding to questions on passenger safety on water transport at a media briefing in Accra, indicated that measures have been taken already to address the issues.
Ghana Maritime Authority, in conjunction with the Navy, are the ones who are responsible for the safety on the water lake. And at times, some of these things do happen. So the last time that this thing happened, I think that I called a meeting between the two agencies that they need to make sure that at least they increase their petrol system or on the lake.
We are saying that when a person dies, or for whatever reasons, resignation, the party that brought him into parliament during the general election must be given the opportunity, like the United States does, to replace him so that the acrimony, the costs, etc., associated with by-elections will be a thing of the past.
Well, that's Peter McMahon, but may the soul of the New Patriotic Party Member of Parliament for the Commonwealth constituency in the Ashanti region continue to rest in perfect peace. We're talking about the late Philip Baswa, who died at the age 54 a couple of days ago. We understand he attended to parliamentary business the whole of last week until last week, Thursday evening, when he fell ill. In fact, he was one of the 3 MPs absent last Friday during the secret voting to approve the ministerial nominees. That one of the 2 NPP MPs who was absent during that sitting. We saw that. But really, we know how this 8th Parliament has operated. It's all about the numbers. Due to how crucial the numbers game is in this 8th Parliament, you'll not be wrong to ask how this development, the unfortunate development, as a matter of fact, will impact on the NPPs, that's their representation, and then also how things are going to play out, because in the coming days, there are 3 revenue bills that are going to be decided upon, all things being equal, on Friday. And they need the numbers. It's all been the numbers. So let me show you how things stand now with what's happened in Parliament. Look at it. Okay? As we speak, the NDC has 136 because James Jachequation is not in Parliament. Then you have the NPP as well having 136 because of the death of this member of Parliament. We put the asterisks to Sarah Jo Asafo, the Dom Kwabena MP, because, as we do know, she's not been very consistent in Parliament, but according to our parliamentary correspondent, over the last few days, she's been seen in Parliament coming in and out. But on the whole, concerns have been raised about her presence and consistency. Even the NPP MPs themselves and the leadership of the majority have their own concerns about Sarah Jo Asafo. And then Ebenezer Kojokum, who is the Hunter West MP, the former chieftaincy minister who resigned on the basis of health and other issues as well. He comes to Parliament, as per our parliamentary correspondent Komla Kloche telling us that this happens, but then because of his health situation, he's not also being quite consistent. Now, with this particular call by Peter McMahon to have by-elections which may be keenly contested, and the stakes will be very high, because this is how the numbers, have played over the period. In previous by-elections, we've seen many instances of violence and the expenses involved. Take a look. This is a chronicling of some of the by-elections we've had in this country. Just for the basis of information, the Talensic constituency, there was Robert Mozori was the member of Parliament at the time. He resigned, and there was a by-election in 2015. This was in the Upper East region. And then you also had the Amenfi West, John Gentua, member of Parliament. He died, unfortunately, in 2015 as well. This was in the Western region. So that year we had 2 by-elections, and then a Boakwa North. Remember the late J.B. Danquah, whose death is still being investigated. He died in 2016, Eastern region. He was the Boakwa North member of Parliament, the constituency in the Eastern region. The Abetifi constituency, Kwesi Pepra, he died in 2016, also in the Eastern region. And then the Ayawaso West Wogon constituency, Emmanuel Jakon, who died in 2019, and you recall the violence that characterized that by-election and the investigation that went into recommendations for the persons who sustained life-threatening injuries to be compensated. That has not been done. In fact, we saw this, and then also now we have the wife of the late Emmanuel Ejako, now in the person of Al-Hassan Lydia, representing the people of Ayawaso West Wogon. She was recommended by the party, okay, even though there was a by-election as well that she went through. Okay, so you look at this, and then also this as well. And we have had a number of them. In 2009, Edward Salia, who was the Jirapa Member of Parliament, died. And also you had Chireponi, Etiwa, Akachi South, Boem, Henry Kamal Ford. You remember, he unfortunately died in 2013. And then the Akachi South MP, the Honorable Dua Jahobi, when he was elected as Speaker of Parliament, had to resign that position, and then there was an election. In the Kumbungu constituency as well, the MP resigned in 2013. So we've had a number of these by-elections as a result of either death or resignation of a Member of Parliament. And we've seen the violence that's characterized some of them as well. Maybe this constituency, that I'm talking about, the Kumeu constituency, the NDC might take a decision whether to weigh their chances or whether or not to invest in there. Because if you look at the voting pattern of the Kumeu constituency, it's not really been favorable to the NDC right from 1996 to date. So this is it. In fact, the late MP's relative was the Member of Parliament in 1996. That's Rio Adai Baswa, who polled some 15,000 votes in 1996, representing 49.6%. And look at the gap between him and the NDC candidate there, 9,354. It's the same in the year 2000 as well. I mean, if you look at it in 2000, the same thing. Look at the same MP, he retained his seat, won by a double of the margin between him and the NDC candidate. Look at 2004. He didn't contest again. Then they had another candidate. That candidate increased the margins, 19,223, as against the NDC's George Amankwa, 5,680. This is Kumeu. Yaban retained his seat in 2008. In 2012, Philip Baswa came in 2012. The late Philip Baswa, he came in 2012. And then he had 18,000, over 18,000, almost 19,000 votes, as a matter of fact. And look at the NDC candidate, the vote reduced there to 4,000. And then look at 2016, Philip Baswa increased the margin to 21,000. And then the NDC candidate who was changed now polled 5,899. Look at the 2020 elections. Philip Baswa reduced from 21,000 to 14,000. And the NDC candidate polled some 11,000, just about 3,000, a little over 3,000 difference between the NPP and the NDC in the 2020 elections in the Kumeu constituency. Okay, so it's all for the NDC to take a decision whether or not they're really going to invest their resources in this constituency based on what happened in 2020. Okay, but we'll see how things will play out in there as well in the coming days, whether they're going to take that decision on what to do with the constituency. Okay. But the proposal that's Peter McMahon is our conversation for tonight. Whether or not we should just have the MPP or we amend the constitution and have the MPP replaced in the subsequent event where an MP dies or resigns. When the constitution is amended, now the party, either MPP or NDC, instead of going through a by-election, would have the MP replaced instead of going through the process of by-election. Stay with me. We'll be back shortly after this quick break. We'll subject this matter to some conversation. And also, Sami Jemfi will be talking tonight on the happenings in Parliament with respect to the NDC MPs. Something is coming up. Stay with us.
(1125), where on the death of a member of parliament, or a vacancy occurs in Parliament, the Clerk of Parliament shall notify the Electoral Commission in writing within 7 days after the vacancy occurred, and a by-election shall be held within 30 days after the vacancy has occurred. The United States is the mother of all multi-party democracies in the world. And I recall, or all of us will recall, that in 2008, when President Obama, as a senator, was elected as president in December, his seat as a senator was filled by the Democratic Party. It wasn't filled by a by-election. So we are saying that when a person dies, or for whatever reasons, resignation, the party that brought him into Parliament during the general election must be given the opportunity, like the United States does, to replace him, so that the acrimony, the costs, etc., associated with by-elections will be a thing of the past. I mean, obviously, one is elected for 4 years. And if we are in a multi-party democracy, as has happened now, may his soul rest in peace, the MP for Kumawu, there's going to be a by-election. And it will be so acrimoniously fought. Monies will be spent. Who benefits? So if this constitutional article is amended to allow the party that sent him to Parliament during the general election to replace him, as is done in the United States, I think that it's a better option.
Well, so that's the 2020 campaign manager of the New Patriotic Party, Peter McMahon, once-time chair of the same NPP, making that proposal that the law be amended, the constitution be amended, so that if a sitting member of parliament dies or resigns, the party the MP belongs to will just appoint someone else as a replacement without necessarily having to go through a by-election. Okay, but what does the law say? What's the position of the law now on this, as against the proposal that is making to be amended? Take a look. This is the constitutional provision on this matter. Article 1125 of the 1992 Constitution says, and I quote, "Whenever a vacancy occurs in Parliament, the clerk to Parliament shall notify the Electoral Commission in writing within 7 days after the vacancy occurred, and a by-election shall be held within 30 days after the vacancy occurred." So, and it continues, notwithstanding clause 5 of this article, a by-election shall not be held within 3 months before the holding of a general election. So, for instance, if this unfortunate incident had happened 3 months to the 2024 elections, then there would not be the need for a by-election. But we are some almost 21 months to the 2024 elections. For instance, in the Infantiman situation, we did not have an election, a by-election, because the MP unfortunately died 2 months before election. So that's what happened. Okay, so that is consistent with this particular provision of the Constitution. So let's explore this a bit further. Let me just say that Peter McMahon made this particular comment at the IEA's seminar on reviewing Ghana's 1992 Constitution, viewpoints from political parties, which was held earlier today. But Dr. Rashid Rahman, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, is connecting with us on Zoom. Dr. Rashid Rahman, thank you so much for joining us on Ghana Tonight. So you've just heard Peter McMahon. Is this consistent with any practice wherever you've been as a democratic watcher or analyst?
I think this is very much, Alfred, in keeping with what happens in our neighboring countries. You know, in the Francophone countries, they practice the list system. Is a system that, for instance, as soon as elections are held, mostly they put forward most of their best candidates on top of the list. And when elections are held, and some of them, those candidates are elected and called to be part of the executive. I mean, those who are, they call them the replacements. I mean, in French, that's the equivalent. I mean, those people are called to immediately take over the seats of those who have been called to be part of the government. But you see, our constitution doesn't allow that. And a call for the revision of the constitution, I think, is in order. But I don't know whether, I mean, the whole electoral system will need to be revised. Otherwise, in terms of cost, in terms of, cost, I mean, first of all, financial, in terms of cost to Ghanaian lives, because we've seen what happened at the Iowa-Wogon by-election and all the consequences and so on and so forth. So it's a call in the right direction. I don't know what is needed. Whether just simply tinkering with the constitution is enough, or we have to go and touch our electoral system. I think there are many who have called for some changes to our electoral system to, for instance, move away from this first past the post to maybe a proportional representation kind of system, because, at the moment, at the end of it all, when votes are counted, we have to deal with an NDC or an MPP candidate. But perhaps if we move to a proportional representation system, maybe we might have some of the other forces having some representation in Parliament. So beyond just simply that issue of replacement in by-elections, I think there's a much bigger conversation about our entire electoral system. Otherwise, we are going to be stuck with these two giant parties, and they can only grow bigger, maybe except if one of them falters and there are very deep cracks and it ends up being broken apart into pieces.
Indeed.
Then we would have maybe some other parties.
Right, but just for the benefit of
the foreseeable future, that's what we are going to be having to contend with.
I see. For the benefit of our viewers, and based on your experience, which countries practice this? As in, when an MP dies or resigns, they just have the party that he or she represented replacing them instead of having a by-election?
I think, all our Francophone countries, Burkina Faso, Togo, Benin, Senegal, Mali, Niger, all of them, that's the system that they practice. I think we are just in a kind of in a place where I think we are just a country that is different, because all our neighbors, that's the practice in their
those
kind
countries.
of electoral system.
Well, but there are others who also hold contrary views, Dr. Rashid Rahman, that how representational or representative will this be? Because this MP, the Commonwealth MP, of some fortunate death, is reigniting the talk of the by-election. He was elected by the constituents of Kumewu based on their own aspirations, so he can go and represent them. Now, if we have to consider this proposal of the MPP just selecting someone based on the party's own expectation to go and replace him, does it not deprive the people of Kumewu their aspirations being effectively represented by someone that they listened to and who also listened to them and was voted for to go to Parliament?
Alfred, I think there are various forms of representation. First of all, in the case of the list system practiced by our neighbors, that list is presented to the electorate, and the electorate elects all those that are on the list in terms of hierarchy. So if you're on top of the list, then I think you get the first kind of priority, and so on and so forth. So in terms of representation, there isn't very much any question about that. But you see, if you go beyond our region, you go to the East African and Southern African region, they have a kind of a hybrid electoral system where, in addition to those that are elected directly or through the proportional representation list system, there are those that are also nominated or appointed by the president according to the dictates of the constitution. Even in West Africa here, I think the Gambia has that system. And then in Sierra Leone, they have chiefs that are appointed to go to parliament. So, I mean, these are constitutional arrangements. And I am not too sure if anyone has questioned that the representative nature of this. Because if you look at our system, where everyone has to go and fight for his seat, you can still talk about, if you want to stretch the argument, you can talk about the unrepresentative nature of it, because there are other parties that are smaller, that go out and campaign and so on. But because it's the first past the post system, they end up not having any representation in parliament. Meanwhile, we need all those voices. So you look at what happens in the Francophone countries, at least the smaller parties are able to get some representation. So if you broaden the concept of representation beyond maybe just constituencies and so on, and look at other stakeholders, other interest groups in a nation, that system provides more representation than our system.
I see. But you see, thank you, Dr. Rashid Draman. We'll see, because already there are calls for this 1992 Constitution, aspects of it to be reviewed, and that it's gaining a lot of grounds, both the MPP and the NDC. In fact, all other political parties are weighing into this, and that's why the IEA is also leading this conversation. But apart from that, there's a call on the Speaker of Parliament, Dr. Rashid Draman, to refer some MPs who openly recorded and showed how they voted for the ministerial nominees to the Privileges Committee. In fact, some members of the minority slammed the majority for such calls. Take a look at what happened in Parliament today.
I'm not saying this to despise anybody. I'm bringing to the attention of all of us so that we may refrain from this act. If we are voting yes, let our yes be in our heart that indeed we voted yes. If we are voting no, let everybody know that we are voting no. It's not just a matter of taking pictures or video and showing to the world just to prove a point that this is the way we did it. To me, it's not the best for this house.
This is so fundamental, and it's edged in the primary law of the land, the Constitution, secret ballot. They have brought the name of this August, house into disrepute. Mr. Speaker, I support the maker of the speaker, the motion, and that I call on you to refer it to the Privileges Committee so that that incident is investigated and our good name is exonerated. I thank you very much for the opportunity.
To the best of my knowledge, the election was conducted in secrecy. If there is any evidence to suggest that it wasn't done in secrecy, what it means is that the results of the election
is void.
Could be null and void.
Yes.
And so if he has evidence contrary to what we know, he should bring it out.
And let's cancel the results.
And then the results can be cancelled and then we do the rightful thing. Mr. Speaker, having said this, I also want to add that going forward, the House needs to do some standards, set some standards as to how we conduct elections in this House.
On that point about setting standards on how elections should be conducted, stay with me. I sat with Sami Jemfi, National Communications Officer of the NDC. We'll hear from him shortly. But let me welcome Fritz Baffour, former Member of Parliament for the Ablekuma South constituency and also a former Information Minister in the late John Evans Mills administration. Thank you so much, Mr. Fritz Baffour, for your time. He's also in the team of Dr. Kwabena Dufo, for a very hopeful of the NDC. But Dr. Rashid Rahman, staying with you, I mean, will the reference of the MPs who are said to have recorded their voting, secret voting, to the Privileges Committee serve as any corrective measure on what we're talking about?
First of all, I think you see, Alfred, the fact of the secrecy of a ballot means that the ballot has to be truly secret. That, I mean, when a person votes, there is no one that's supposed to know how he or she voted. On the night of January 6 to January 7, the NDC fought vehemently, to defend the secret nature of the ballot, to make the secrecy of the ballot sacred. And we all witnessed what happened on that day, because they said they would not allow any MPP MP to let any of their colleagues see the way they voted. And, they stood by this principle until I think the House accepted it and the vote went ahead to produce the current Speaker of the 8th Parliament. So if you go by this, I think the NDC MPs should be the first group of MPs to know that what they were doing, I think, was in violation of a principle that they upheld at the beginning of the 8th Parliament. So that is where, Alfred, the challenge lies. But you see, beyond just the fact that they took pictures and they took videos and so on, I think you have to begin to ask the question, I mean, what would push these MPs to the extent that they have to take videos and pictures to prove their loyalty? I think there are a number of questions that we need to ask. Were they under some threat? Were they, operating under some fear and panic? A lot of questions, Alfred, that would search for answers.
Indeed. Dr. Rashid Rahman, I thank you so much for your thoughts on this. I'm bringing Fritz Baffour. So you're a former Member of Parliament, and this is the call by some MPs. What's your take on this?
Yes, it is against the practice of the House, and I don't know where that kind of practice came into being. We're seeing it in our primaries, we're seeing it at every poll in the country, regardless of the party. I think it's very unseemly. But the thing is that the pressure on parliamentarians or delegates is so much that people want to prove their integrity. But in doing so, then they go against the grain of the spirit of parliamentary practice.
Supporting this call by some MPs to have the minority MPs who captured their voting, secret voting on video or with pictures to be hauled to the Privileges Committee?
Actually, because the thing is that we should sort of stop certain practices which I believe are unseemly. Why, when they say secret ballot, why would you go against the grain and take pictures of the ballot that you've taken? It goes against the grain of parliamentary thinking and parliamentary practice. I know that there are reasons for it, but reasons like that, should not be sustained. And therefore, I'm not at odds with the parliamentary leadership if they want to do something about that. And I think that it should involve not only the minority and the majority, because both sides have done that kind of thing before. And I don't agree with it, but I can understand the undercurrents that create that kind of situation.
Zephyr Rafford, thank you for your thoughts on this. He is a former member of parliament for the Ablekuma South constituency and the former information minister in the Eswal Mills administration. Appreciate your time. Sami Jemfe is National Communications Officer of the NDC. He's talking about this entire secret balloting process. He says that should be changed or looked at again because it undermines democracy. Take a look. What concern exactly do you have with the procedure or the law on secret balloting in parliamentary procedure, where members of parliament would have secret balloting or secret voting?
Well, it's all about deepening accountability. It's all about ensuring that parliamentarians who are representatives of the people act for and on behalf of their people. So if the people in a constituency elects an MP and the MP comes to parliament, on all issues, the MP is supposed to champion the views, the will, the aspirations of the people he or she is representing. And so it should be possible, like it pertains in other advanced democracies, for constituents to know the voting patterns of their MPs on key national issues. It should be possible for constituents, the people in whom power and sovereignty resides, to know how the MPs vote on various national issues, so that they can decide, they can make informed decisions on whether or not to renew their mandates. You understand? But the situation where, under the pretext of secret ballots, MPs make decisions that run contrary to the views, the will, the wishes, and the aspirations of their people, we believe is not in accordance with best democratic practices. And so we think that where in the Constitution Parliament is called upon to make approvals or to elect persons into certain positions, such elections or votes should not be secret, but that it should be possible for people to ask and be informed or be supplied with information on how their members of parliament voted on such issues.
With specific reference to what happened in parliament, where your MPs voted contrary to what you, as a political party, directed them to do. Now, issues have been raised about possible bribery, and then also issues about the relationship that some of them had with the previous leadership and all. How is the party going to address these issues that came up, and what led to this decision on Friday?
Well, I think that in the long term, the nation has to look at this issue of secret ballots in parliament and do the necessary amendments as we are proposing. And like you have said, many legal brains, many stakeholders agree with this position. That is the best practice in the advanced democracies. And only people who intend on doing mischief in parliament, intend on taking bad decisions, not decisions which do not reflect the will, wishes, and aspirations of their people, will be in support of the current system of secret ballot. So I think that it should be possible to get some consensus around that. But before that, before that is done, we can only continue to hope against hope that members of parliament will do the right things. They will always uphold the national interest above any personal or parochial interest. That is what the people of this country are yearning for. And I think that is what members of parliament, not only on the NDC side, but also on the MPP side, should do on any matter that you are called upon to decide or to vote. Ask yourself, what is the national interest? What are the people for? Okay, what is in the best interest of the nation? So that with regards to the recent matter you referred to, you ask yourself, where does Ghana stand? What is the state of the economy? Given the size of government, should we be increasing the size of government, the already bloated size of government in this time? Definitely no. Should we be downsizing to cut down on expenditure and plow those resources into other critical sectors of the nation? Emphatically, yes. That is what every reasonable, well-meaning Ghanaian expects. And so we can only continue to appeal to the conscience of members of parliament before the amendment some of us are proposing is done. And we can only hope that they will do the right thing.
Okay, so is the party going to just forget about this, close its ranks, and move forward? Or you're going to investigate or institute measures to investigate exactly what happened? Because this is not the first time that you as a party have directed your MPs to do something and they go contrary. 2021, the approval of Hawa Kumsin, Kojo Ponkroma, and the former Greek Minister, Dr. Freya Koto, you directed them to do something. They did otherwise. It's happened again. So what are you going to do?
Well, we have to move on as a party. But that is not to say that if the party gets any evidence that any member of parliament acted contrary to the collective decision of the party that they were part of, the party will not act. I believe that the party will act if the party comes by any such evidence. But we have to move on because the party is much bigger than its caucus in parliament. The caucus in parliament is just one wing, a very important wing, I must say, but it is just one wing of the party. And so if the party fails to execute an important assignment of national importance through that wing, the party has not failed as a corporate entity. It is that wing that has failed. And the party can, through other means, press home such demands. And so we've made it clear that we believe in a lean government. We believe that the difficulties currently find themselves experiencing call for government to downsize. This government is too bloated, not only in terms of the number of ministers and deputy ministers, but even in terms of the number of political appointees at the presidency. Government must cut down on its size. Government must cut down on its expenditure. It must risk priorities. Spend on the
Well, so that's Sami Jemfe there, and stating quite clearly what the party intends to do going forward. Stay with me. We'll be back shortly after this quick break. The University of Ghana has been responding to members of parliament who are raising questions as to why the University Council has failed to carry out a purported court directive. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Ghana Tonight. Now, the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament has directed the Education Committee of Parliament to investigate the University of Ghana's willful disregard of a court order to reinstate students of the Commonwealth Hall after they were dismissed. Contributing to a statement, Bolsa South Member of Parliament, Dr. Clement Park, the MPs were unanimous in their condemnation of the University of Ghana, whose council is headed by the former Chief Justice.
Management of the University of Ghana have refused to act in accordance with the dictates of the order. The police and other allied security personnel have been employed by the management of the University of Ghana to frustrate the efforts being made by the students to call attention to the management of the university to obey the order of the court and to reinstate them.
It's for an institution like the University of Ghana to disregard a court order. It is something that this House must take it seriously, and we must act as soon as possible. We should not allow institutions like the University of Ghana to disregard the laws, to disobey our court orders. It cannot be. And we will therefore call on everybody here to support the call made by my senior brother, Honorable Apak and Roxanne.
Mr. Speaker, Commonwealth produce the best gentlemen, produce the good husbands, produce the bold men, and produce a lot of leaders like my colleague said. And in the chamber, if you take the census and tie people here to halls in all the universities in this country, you won't go beyond Commonwealth as number one. That has the number of people in this chamber. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot to be learned from Commonwealth, and I think that the University of Ghana should obey the laws of this country and obey the court order and bring back the students.
I think I would refer this statement to the Committee of Education to ask them to engage the university and to report back to us why the university authorities, headed by the immediate past Chief Justice, she is the chairman of the University Council. So we expect that she would ensure that the law and order, respect for the courts, the sanctity of the court orders are respected. So I direct that the statement be referred to the Committee on Education to engage the university authorities.
So that's Joseph Usu, who is the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament. But, well, this matter has been referred to the Education Committee. Professor Ransford Jampo is a professor of political science at the University of Ghana, and he is a member of the University of Ghana's communication team. He's joining us on the telephone. Professor Jampo, you've heard the MPs. They're not happy about this. So what's the University Council's position on this matter?
Well, please, the University of Ghana Council is not disregarding any court directive. It is important that members of parliament get their facts right on this particular issue. And it is shameful for a few members of parliament who have had association with the Commonwealth to peddle falsehood just to do the bidding of some people who are not members of the university community, who are done with school and are trying to drag the name and image of the university into the mud. It's quite shameful. And so it's not all members of parliament. Look at the background of those who spoke. We are all former members of a particular hall who are trying to do the bidding of some other people. No court has given a directive that has been flouted by any university council. It is important that we do not involve themselves in peddling falsehood because it is an honorable house. I do not see why the whole parliament would allow itself to be used, its platform to be used by a few disgruntled people to be peddling falsehood. There is a matter, the university is implementing a residential policy that has been approved by all channels and structures within the university, including its council. Some people feel that they don't like the accommodation policy, residential policy that is being implemented. And so they've taken the university to court. The court gave a ruling that we should halt the implementation of our residential policy. By the time the ruling came, we were already done with the implementation, and students had been admitted into the hall. It was going to be difficult for us to throw the belongings and luggage of the students out of the hall. And so immediately we filed an appeal and a stay of execution of the ruling that has been given. And so the matter at the moment is before the court, and it is being heard. And so I am quite surprised that some members of parliament do not understand the fact that if you have the right to go to court to get a certain ruling, other people also have the right to go to the same court to seek an appeal and to file for a stay of execution. And while the matter is being heard before the court, you do not have the right to come out publicly to misinform the public and to create an impression as if some people are disregarding court ruling. The University of Ghana is made up of people who are law-abiding, and its management and authorities, they know the laws, and they are very law-abiding citizens of Ghana. They would not do anything to disrespect and to disregard lawful orders given by a court of competent jurisdiction. We won't do that. But let this be known to the few members of parliament who are also old vandals that the University of Ghana would continue to protect life and property, and then will continue to create and protect a conducive environment and atmosphere for learning. And nobody, not even parliament, can force us to do otherwise. Thank you.
Anyway, but, well, are you saying that there is no court ruling on this matter as against what the MPs are saying?
I am saying that they went to court ex parte to seek a certain injunction. And when we heard, we said no. We went to the same court to appeal and to also apply for stay of execution. And these matters have been heard. And rulings have not been given. And so if you have gone, you see, it is ignorance on the part of any member of parliament to say that a court has given a directive and that others do not have the right to appeal. And that if a court has given a directive and you have appealed against that directive, then by virtue of the fact that you have appealed, you are disregarding the court directive. If you say that as a member of parliament, then it means you are an ignorant member of parliament. And I think this is not what is needful. What is important for members of parliament to do is for them to know how to comport themselves and to vote on important national issues in a manner that syncs with the national mood, and not to be doing things that are in complete disconnect with the national mood. I think that is what we are talking about. We are talking about the role of parliament, how parliament would be able to play its role as a countervailing authority to the powers of the executive, how they have not been able to perform this function in a manner that makes parliament independent. That is what we are talking about. We are not talking about a few disgruntled people going to the floor of parliament to make assertions and to spew complete, misinformation and falsehood.
Well, Professor Jampo, thank you. We'll see what the that's the Education Committee's decision will be on this matter. Professor Ramsford Jampo is a member of the University of Ghana Communication Team, a professor of political science. Appreciate your time. But you recall we had a conversation yesterday on this show about the worrying spate of canoe accidents on our water bodies, claiming lives, the most recent being the loss of 8 lives in the Oti region. Well, today we put a question to the Transport Minister on your behalf, Kwekufori Esiama, about the safety of passengers on water transport. Take a look.
Ghana Maritime Authority, in conjunction with the Navy, are the ones who are responsible for the safety on the water lake. And at times, some of these things do happen. So the last time that this thing happened, I think that I called a meeting between the two agencies that they need to make sure that at least they increase their petrol system on the lake, because at times they close, and when they close, some of these traditional canoe operators don't follow the rules order. They don't. My information is that they don't operate 24 hours. So I've told them that if possible, they can do a 24-hour operation. The Navy is asking me to buy them an additional speed boat so that they can do, but you will see. It's unfortunate, and I'm sure that going forward, they will take cognizance of the lapses in terms of what is happening to make sure that they fill in.
Monitor this quite closely, but thank you so much for staying with us here on Ghana Tonight. On behalf of the rest of the team, we appreciate your company. I am Alfred Akansi. Have a good night.